Okay, got it. So my guest today is Viviana Coles, Dr. Viviana Coles, out of Houston, Texas, and this is going to be an exciting. This is going to be exciting talk. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start off by giving you the questions that we're gonna cover, and then I'm gonna do your intro because I feel like you're most qualified to answer these questions and help us kind of relationship's a big deal. Relationship is a very big deal, and it wasn't until several years back I understood the importance of it. But one of the questions, so you have some time to think about it, right? Is what are some tips for a power couple to keep the intimacy and growth going in a relationship when we work together, right? For male and female. That's one question. And then the other question is going to be, what are your thoughts on the whole females trying to be more masculine versus their natural feminine role? And maybe that might be, I don't know. I'm curious to know, right? Okay. But first, I'm going to give you an introduction because I was looking at your resume, not your resume, but just your bio. And like, you're a doctor of marriage and family therapy, licensed marriage and family therapist, certified sex therapist. And I believe I heard a video you said that can only be obtained like in Florida, right? Something like that.
Um, no, so actually, Florida is the only state that requires that
Oh,
if
okay,
you're
got it.
going to do sex therapy, you have to become certified. But I knew that I wasn't going to be practicing in Florida, but I wanted to be the best and I wanted to be at the top of my game. So I
Uh,
decided to get certified, and now I help other people do that as well.
got it. Your areas of specialty is a physical and emotional intimacy, relationship counseling, sex and relationship issues, affair recovery, dating help, premarital counseling, and motherhood and parenting. And so I mean, you're well qualified, and that's just like not even a quarter of your bio. And so your website is drviviana.com. And I want everybody to go to your website and just kind of look at your bio and I feel very comfortable, getting on the conversation with you because we're not going to go based off what I think are just opinions. We're going to go based off some heavy research that you've done. And what I've learned is like you're very heavily into research and knowing, the root cause of certain things.
Yeah,
So
well, I've been seeing couples and individuals having issues like these for the past 20 years. So sometimes, experience can trump research, and it's like
yeah,
what's happening in other people's lives and in their bedrooms. I don't mind sharing that with your audience.
yeah, for sure. Let's what's pretty interesting. I'm pretty sure you found this out is like a lot of people have the same issues, right? Like a lot of couples think they're like dealing with something that's very unique.
Right. They think that they're the only ones dealing with it, but they're absolutely not. And I find that fortunately, that is one of the good things about social media is that people can find help for the issues that they're having. The bad part about social media is that most of the time people are only sharing when things are going awesome.
Yeah,
And they're only sharing what they want people to perceive.
yeah,
And sometimes it can be a very lonely place when you think, oh gosh, are we the only ones struggling with this? So I can absolutely tell you, no, you are not the only people struggling with whatever issue you're dealing with.
yeah,
And as a relationship and sex therapist for the past 20 years, it's so wonderful when people do finally find me and they want to share that they have these issues they want to work through. But it's also really sad that for the past however many months or years, they felt alone.
yeah. Wow. And I guess remember I said it wasn't until a few years that this was kind of like became on my radar as an important thing, right? Because for myself, like we're in a blended family, right, of eight. And so it's so so I grew up without a dad, so I didn't really have that structure with the parent and how a husband should act or none of that. So it's all been a growing process until I met Tim Story. I don't know if you're familiar with Tim Story, but he said, hey, like part of having a life balance is not just about work and family. It's about your finances, your spiritual, your relationship, and I was like, man, that's so powerful. But
Yeah.
we can get it.
Well, and
But
there's a woman, a really smart woman out there. Her name is Jenna Kutcher, and she says that she stopped using the word balance when it came to
Mm,
life and work. What she started to say is that there needs to be a blend. And that's
mm,
actually something that we can totally talk about in reference to one of the first questions that you asked, because
yes.
I do think it's important for power couples to figure out how to blend their desires, dreams, obligations together, because it doesn't ever really work the way that people think that it might, which is like, okay, tag, now it's your turn. Tag, now it's my turn. Because treading water is very difficult. It's not enough to just kind of say, okay, I will handle everything on my own. And while you go and do your thing, it's really important that you're still carrying some emotional intimacy,
Yeah.
emotional labor, even if you can't do the physical. If you can't help financially, then maybe you can contribute in other ways.
Mm,
But it's so important to always feel like you are contributing in order to keep that sense of growth and achievement and
yeah.
power, like so many power couples really want. They're both thriving, and it's because they are mixing their lives together. They're blending what they do.
Mm.
It's more like a dance, right? Instead of a tag team
That's what
wrestling
you're
match.
saying. That's what you're saying. So it's just like, yeah, you're right. Like it's just like a dance. Like you're just kind of going, you're kind of going with, I'm not gonna say, I don't know if going with the flow is the right word, but you're both going based off of each other's movement, I guess,
Yeah,
emotions.
and you're helping to create momentum
Mm,
forward, right? But it gets stronger if the two of you are looking in the same direction.
yeah.
Right? You might be going backwards, but you're very aware when you're dancing, right?
Mm,
You're very aware of like, okay, we're both going in this direction. Because what happens when you go in opposite directions? You end up losing the steps, or you push against each other, you step on each other's toes. So I think it's really important for couples who are trying to achieve greatness together
mm,
that obviously communication is very important, and also introspection, looking into yourself and making sure that you're checking in with how you're feeling about things. Don't just swallow your feelings, because what that does is it almost it does impede
mm,
on your partner's ability to help you and to care for you, and inevitably they'll end up feeling blindsided by your feelings. Whereas if you're like, hey, during my morning check-in, while I was brushing my teeth, or while I was cutting my toenails or walking or getting my coffee, I realized, like, I'm feeling really lost, or I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm feeling disconnected, or I'm feeling unheard, or I feel like I've just been, a passenger. And it's important for people to share those feelings, even if they feel like their partner may not know how to deal with them. It's better
yeah.
that they share them and give them the chance. Don't keep your feelings to yourself, because then you're not giving your partner the chance to address them.
Oh wow. Yeah. And can you unpack like more on the communication side, and then we'll go into
Yeah.
introspection? Like, uh, what are like the key things for the communication? Because see, like, I grew up kind of like being naive as well. Where I thought communication was just talking, but the most powerful thing about communication is listening.
Absolutely.
Right.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And sometimes, especially when you're having a virtual talk with someone like we are, it's easy to talk over each other, and we try not to, but sometimes it's like, well, are you finished? Are you done? When you're in person, if you have the luxury of being able to be in the same place as your partner, it's so important to take turns and
Mm,
showing that you've understood what it is that they're saying. So if your partner sits you down and y'all are like sitting next to each other or across from each other, and they say, hey, you know, I felt like this when you did this, or when you did this, I felt like this, I statements. It's not enough to immediately just say, okay, but, and then say, explain your side of it and why you did something or why their perception is wrong. If you struggle with that, and this is the way that you're struggling with communication, is if everything turns into an argument.
mm,
So if everything's turning into an argument, one of the things that you can do is say the words, so what I hear you saying is, and then repeat what it is that they're saying.
Yeah.
Don't try to translate it or summarize it. Just say, so what I hear you saying is this, is that right?
Yeah.
And then they can give you the, they can say, yes, that's about right, or and this, or you missed out on this. Because what I have found is with a lot of couples who everything turns into an argument, two things are happening. One is that they're interrupting each other, and men cannot stand to be interrupted. It feels very disrespectful. That's a theme that I saw in my office at Houston Relationship Therapy this week. Lots of that going on. The other piece of it that's happening is they might end up arguing about something that wasn't even what was actually trying to be
Yeah.
said.
You're saying.
So there's a misunderstanding or miscommunication, and they're arguing about that. And so the other partner is kind of like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And you're like missing each other. So really making sure that you are
Clear.
acknowledging and understanding what's actually in front of you, not just running with whatever it is that you think came your way.
Wow. Yeah. That's big right there. Because a lot of times, I would say men are guilty of it, right? Because I'm guilty of it as well. We look at everything as like a problem, or like we're trying to solve everything. So like whenever we hear something, we kind of assume something else. And I think just slowing down and trying to understand what they're trying to articulate and get clear on that, maybe it's not even what we think it is. Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So get clear about that, and I bet you it'll decrease the number of arguments that you have by at least 30%.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? It also the communication, like it opens up a lot of healing, I think. You
Mhm.
know, I didn't realize the importance of communication till maybe I was like 20 something. You know, my dad had took his life when I was very young.
Oh,
I never talked about I didn't know how to talk about it.
mm.
And when I think I was like 3 years old, and whenever I got older, I started to like really talk about it. And as I talked about it more and more, I was at peace. Like,
You were able to have a little bit of healing.
yeah, yeah. And
Oh,
just like and that was like very big for me. It was kind of like a self kind of awakening that I had. And I was like, man, it's kind of big. So whenever I'm always trying to get people to open up, or just because I know the importance of that. You know what I'm saying? Like I know that it's gonna help them, very big. They don't realize it now, but it does. So
absolutely.
inner and what was the word? Inner inspection?
Introspection.
Oh, introspection.
Introspection.
And
Yeah. That's a big one because for a lot of people, we think, checking in with ourselves is usually just about, checking in with our bodies. And if we
yeah,
have any like tightness or if we have any pains, well, while that's very important, sometimes it's just nice to know what you're feeling. And there's something really great, a really great tool out there that you can find online if you Google it called the feelings wheel.
wow.
And it you think like, oh, I know what feelings are. I know. Well, no, there are countless number
You know what? Yeah,
of different feelings. And I have one on every single um, coffee table at my practice because you never know how when you're sharing what maybe you're experiencing anger. Okay, but that's not the actual emotion behind it. And then they look on the wheel and they find three or four much more succinct,
oh
much
wow,
more accurate
yeah,
descriptors of what it is that they're feeling instead of just I'm angry with you.
yeah.
Most people get very defensive if you say I'm angry with you.
Yeah,
But if
or
you
they
say
get angry when they say, "Why are you mad?"
right,
Right.
exactly.
That,
So that's a really easy way, something that you can take away at home and have it printed out. And it's really nice if you start that early if you have children at home,
yeah,
because they even have less awareness of what feelings are and what they're experiencing. So if early on they're able to have, the right descriptor, a more accurate descriptor of what it is, an adjective of what they're feeling, even in their relationships, even when they're at school, when they're talking to teachers, when they're talking to their partners in the future, and especially with their parents, with you, it's probably going to go a lot more smooth because you can really get to the heart of the issue.
wow, that's a big one right there. Because people don't under, I think people don't under realize they don't realize how many different feelings there is, and so whenever you can pinpoint a feeling, then it's like, hey, I feel like this.
I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling disappointed is very different than I feel bad. Or even worse is when people just say, I don't feel good.
yeah. So like if let's just yeah, I don't feel good, right? So if someone says I don't like if someone says I don't feel good, what would your response be to that?
I'd ask, okay, what do you mean by that? Do you mean physically? Do you mean emotionally? Do you mean about things in general in your life? Or is this about this particular topic that we're talking about? How long have you felt badly? Show me on the feelings wheel. What are you feeling right this moment?
Yeah,
And then I will also even say sometimes if it's a first time client, I'll say, what were you feeling when you made the call to my office to make an appointment with me?
yeah,
Because that can help them to realize like, oh, things have changed since then, or things have changed for the worse, things have changed for the better, or I'm still feeling the same way. So then I know as a therapist that if they're feeling the same way, that I'm catching them kind of in the present, quote unquote,
yeah,
versus catching them and they've already worked through the issues
yeah.
that they called about. Because sometimes that happens. People are very resourceful and they can usually deal with a lot of the issues that they face in life without professional help.
Mm,
So when that happens and they feel like, oh my gosh, well, I just reached out because we had this huge blow up fight. And I had always said that if we ever had an issue, I was going to make an appointment with you. And I finally did it. And so I can say, okay, so it sounds like this has happened before. Let's talk about that. It sounds like the issue that you came in for, in reaction to what happened
mm,
isn't that much of an issue right now. But what tends to cause issues in your relationship?
mm.
And then we look at patterns that they're working
Yeah,
through and
wow,
struggling with.
wow. We can unpack that because that's pretty interesting too. The patterns, like because patterns, like we get lost in our daily kind of routine, and we're not aware of certain patterns. How can we monitor our patterns, like to see?
I love that. And I think women, especially biological females, we tend to be very aware of cycles and patterns because of the knowledge that we have about our bodies and our
Yeah,
menstrual cycles and all of that and hormones. Men don't tend to have that same awareness. So when it comes to cycles and patterns, they don't maybe pick up on those things as quickly. Not that once they do, they don't know how to, find solutions, but they may not be as aware of them. So I think for a lot of women, we're encouraged to see patterns, to see, okay, when this happens, I tend to feel like this. One thing that comes up quite a bit in my office is people say, we have the worst fights after we've been drinking.
mm, yeah,
And so guess what? They try to stop drinking. And then they still argue sometimes. It may not
yeah.
be as bad, or they go back to drinking because they have a few months where they don't have fights and they go back and it starts over again. That's a really
Wow.
common couples issue
Yeah.
that I found is that they have really bad fights when they've been drinking.
What?
Um,
Sorry to
but
interrupt you on
go
this,
ahead.
but you brought up a good point there. What do you see that the root cause of that is? Like of when people drink, they get into arguments.
Typically resentment and insecurity.
Mm,
So if they have resentments that they've been holding on to, issues that have not been resolved, they've just been swept under the rug. If they feel like issues that they brought up or concerns that they brought up to their partner have been dismissed,
yeah,
have not been acknowledged, or maybe they've been acknowledged but not worked through, those tend to eke out when there's alcohol and that lowered inhibition. Um, there seems to be a little bit more of a filter of, are you with me or are you against me?
yeah,
And you tend to not give them as much of a benefit of the doubt when you've been drinking.
yeah,
I also noticed that, when couples are experiencing insecurity, maybe maybe there hasn't been as much openness, maybe there hasn't been as much physical intimacy,
yeah.
maybe things that you've counted on as a couple, part of the traditions that you do have been taken away because of the pandemic or because of
Mm,
financial issues or whatever,
yeah.
stressor.
Wow.
then that can also cause insecurity. And insecure people don't tend to be the best partners at the moment. So I see a lot of people who are struggling with insecurity,
Yeah.
whether it's deserved or not, or they need to actually have it or not, um, or if it's justified, is what I'm trying to say, or
Yeah.
not.
What are some tips? And I'm not sure if people will remember, but what are some tips that they can do whenever they are drinking and they get in an argument?
Well,
Because I
if
mean
they
that can,
find, yeah, and I can speak directly to the audience here. If you find that more often than not, a night of drinking ends up with an argument, or worse, there can be physical violence, there can
yeah,
be threats made, threats to just leave or threats to harm each other. If there are really terrible words thrown around, then the next time that you plan on going and having an outing where there might be alcohol, it would be really important for y'all to make a commitment or some
mhm,
sort of a plan to have fewer drinks or to have a cutoff. Now, your partner cannot enforce that cutoff. You are an adult.
yeah,
But if the two of you can go into it with an agreement of either a time limit that you're going to be there
yeah.
or a drink limit, then that can help really decrease a lot of the potential for arguments to turn into
Wow,
something really ugly when you've been drinking.
that's big, and
Doesn't
that
happen nearly as much with any other types of drugs, but with
yeah,
alcohol, it tends to happen quite a bit.
yeah. I mean, and that's good because that just them doing that will probably start to build some momentum in their relationship to for structure, right? And they understand they can get through it, you know? Wow.
Absolutely. Well, and sometimes having a plan, just like, if you're a little bit nervous about going into a family reunion where you have issues with someone, or if it's the first time you're going to see your ex
Yeah,
since getting a divorce, there's so many different things that can cause some anxiety. And some people will think, well, oh, let me drink to
yeah,
self-medicate so that I'm not so that I can be more chill.
yeah,
No, people don't get more chill when they've been drinking. If they're happy and stable, yes, but if they're not, it like stirs the pot.
wow. Okay. I mean, do you want to get into the next question?
I'd love to.
I mean, and so the question was, what are your thoughts on females trying to play a more masculine role versus the natural feminine role that, and the reason why this question has I thought of this question. I was at an event a while back, and there was this female that she stood up, and she had several businesses. She was very wealthy. She accomplished everything that she was set out to do, and she was like, you know what, like I would give all this up to just be a woman and be with a man. You know what I mean? Like if she was working too hard with and it, as a feminine, I mean, as a masculine role to accomplish these things, and she left out that need that she women need. I'm assuming that women need that.
So I think part of the reason, and we can really learn a lot from just the language that we use when we're talking about dynamics, especially when we're trying to figure out power dynamics within a relationship. So
Yeah,
um, as somebody who, I've been married to a man and I identify as a woman, and we've been married for going to be 16 years next month.
congratulations.
Um, and we have a family and we have businesses and we have all of the things. And we're very fortunate to have the team and the partnership that we have. It's very difficult for someone to hear, especially because I am definitely a feminist. I feel like it's so important to not fall into roles just because of gender.
Mhm.
If it's not within your spirit to be that way, if it's not something that you were raised with or that you find to be helpful, I don't think that the biological sex or that the gender that you subscribe to is something that should make you act a certain way
Yeah,
or that others should make you think that you have to fit into a certain box.
yeah,
So for me, I think that using like when we talk about softer or when we talk about uh gentle. And what was the word in particular that the question said about feminine, traditional feminine? What was it?
Like, okay, so the question was, what are your thoughts on females trying to play a more masculine role in society versus their natural feminine side?
Okay, so natural and feminine, and more traditional male
Mhm.
or more masculine, I feel like those are constructs. And what that
Okay.
means, a social construct, for all of you who are listening, is it's something that is created from
Mm,
society. It's
yeah.
not something that it is inherent from, the way that we're born or from our genetics or anything like
Yeah.
that. So when I hear about women being described as, leaders or powerful or assertive, in my mind, because I do believe that that's the social construct, masculinity versus femininity. I don't think about that in terms of they're trying to be more masculine.
Yeah, that's what you're
I think
saying.
about it as they're just being more of leaders. They're being stronger. They're being
That's
more
what you're saying.
assertive. They're more empowering. They're building themselves up. And maybe if that was the case, it's possible that if that was only men who have ever done that, then
Mm,
I can see how it would seem like maybe women are doing that. But that's not the case. Women have always
yeah.
wanted to be stronger leaders, helpers. We've always wanted to empower others and strengthen bonds. So I don't see that as masculine, and I don't
That's what
see
you're saying. Yeah, that's what you're saying.
yeah, and I don't see it as like natural to be, I don't see natural for women to be less than
Mm.
men.
So,
So
let me ask this, and so how does a woman balance that? Like, how does a woman balance those two characters, right? Because it's like the nurturing mom, but then it's the organized leader,
um,
organization leader.
so I actually think that the skills that
Mm,
moms have to be nurturing and to handle all of that are very similar to the skills
yeah.
that leaders have, good communicators have, group leaders have. I mean, I don't know that it has to be balanced or that you have to choose to be one or the other. And
Yeah.
actually, bringing it back to relationships and the dynamics, the couples that do the best that I see in my office and the improvements that are made is when people really try to stop having to choose, am I going to choose to be a good father today? Am I
Yeah.
going to choose to be a good wife today? Am I going to choose to be a good sister, daughter, caretaker, um, PTA leader,
Yeah.
CEO? If they feel like they have to choose, then they're probably out of whack and they're not blending their lives very well.
That makes sense.
I
Yeah.
I can't. I mean, we all talk about, well, now I have my this hat on, and now I have my this hat,
Yeah.
and now I'm
Yeah.
doing. But the skill sets are helpful in lots of different areas. And if you feel like you have to be Jekyll and Hyde or you're Two-Faced because, well, in this scenario I'm like this, and in this scenario I'm completely different,
Yeah.
that is not sustainable in the long run.
Yeah. Mm,
You're doing this and having this podcast so that you can kill lots of birds with one stone. And I'm sure one of them is that you enjoy talking to other people, but
yeah.
you also enjoy helping other people.
Yeah.
And you also have, I'm sure, an amazing agenda that is to talk about things that are interesting to you.
Yeah.
And all of those things you have figured out how to blend them together, but this wouldn't be nearly as good for you, and this would be so much more stressful for you if you never like the topics, you can't stand talking to other people, you
Yeah.
don't ever want to be on camera or hear the sound of your voice. That would be a
Wow.
totally different story. So you can
Wow.
use the different parts of you and really blend them together to show up for yourself and to show up for others. And there's no reason why we can't tap into
Yeah.
all sides of our personality and all sides of our socially constructed
Yeah,
selves.
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It kind of goes back to the introspection, right? Introspection,
Mhm.
like figuring out what you need to blend.
Yeah. And sometimes seeing a psychotherapist can really help you if you're struggling in that place.
Mm,
I've worked with a lot of young and older men and women, and of course, non-binary, all sorts of people who are really struggling with their identity. And
yeah,
it doesn't always have to do with their sexual identity or their gender. I don't mean like that. I just mean in general, who am I now as a 41-year-old woman versus who I was when I was 21?
yeah, wow.
Who am I now as, president and founder of four
Yeah,
different corporations? Like, who am I now after having teenage kids versus having 2-year-olds? Like,
yeah,
it's
that's a
and we
big,
don't often do that. We don't often take a stop and say, wait, who am I now? And
yeah,
what choices am I making that are going to help me get even closer to who I want to be 3 years from now? What
wow,
decisions am I making
yeah,
today that further me and my and who I want to be in my identity?
wow. This is good because we covered like a whole like kind of self identity thing, right? Because it's like okay, the feelings circle, right? The feelings wheel, the feeling the feeling wheel, feeling is it the feelings or feeling?
Feelings wheel, yes,
Yeah,
and you can just
okay,
Google it. It's
yeah.
really pretty, it's colorful, but it's so great to
My
just,
wife has one of those.
yeah,
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 and
great.
so it starts with the feeling wheel, then the introspection, right? And then, who am I now? You're almost like taking some time to figure out really what your identity is and what you enjoy doing and how you blend. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? It's what's I meet a lot of entrepreneurs and I meet a lot of people that want to do big things. And, I ask them what do you want to do? And they're like, I don't even know.
Yeah.
And it's hard for someone to know what they want to do when they don't even know like who they are.
Yes, and that's one
Yeah,
of the things I have never done I've done mentorship with people who want to kind of see how I do what I do and get into my
yeah,
field and love being in media and on TV and all of that, but aren't necessarily wanting to be actors or anything. And one of the biggest questions is that I try to avoid asking them what they want to do, and more we start off with who is it that you want to be?
yeah,
And a lot of that comes from my own experience growing up. For the longest time, I thought I wanted to be a dentist.
yeah,
And then I realized, no, I didn't want to be a dentist. My dad had kept telling me I should be a dentist because it's a beautiful, helpful field that has normal hours.
yeah, yeah,
And then I realized, late middle school, early high school, I don't want to be a dentist.
yeah.
I know what I want to do. But I did like the idea, and I always have, of controlling my own schedule.
Wow.
And
You-
to this day, it is such an important facet of the choices that I make is can I control my own schedule?
yeah, wow. That's huge. Like what I think that your father, he I think he did one of the greatest things, uh, and I think a lot of people fear of when you ask them, what do you want to do, right? Like even if you ask someone young or anybody, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do? And they're almost scared to decide because they think that if I decide this, that's it. Like, you know, but for example, your dad said you should probably be a dentist, right? And it gave you a destination. And when you were along that destination, you found the path that made sense to you. But if you would have never went on that journey, you would have never found the path that today. Wow.
Yeah. And sometimes, this is one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is how much impact and influence you have on the younger people around you and even on your peers. If you're trying to encourage the people around you to be their best selves, not necessarily to live their best lives, because who knows what that looks like these days,
Yeah,
but to be their best selves and to feel at most at home with themselves, then chances are they're going to find the right path,
yeah.
you know.
Wow. All right. Well, I think we kind of went over our time a little bit, but I definitely want to have you on again. Um,
Thank
and
you.
however I can add value to your channel and your brand, reach out. I'm definitely gonna get some of your books and I'll
Oh,
order those.
thanks.
hand some of those out. And if I have any business or partnerships, I'll definitely connect you with some people that are doing some great things in the industry.
I love that. Thank you
And
so much. And for
yeah,
everyone who's out there, if you're thinking as you're kind of listening to this and wondering, oh my goodness, do I need help? Some people are not really, they don't really need, or they're not ready to commit to an actual therapy
yeah,
relationship. But on my website, drviviana.com, if you click on the big question mark on the front page, you can ask a question and I'll respond. It's not considered therapies, it's not considered even coaching, it's more advice giving, but I can answer with a video response. It's kind of a very nice little sticking your toes into the kiddie pool if you have any specific questions that you think I might be able to answer for you. So that's a good way to do it. And of course, um, following me on social media, I tend to put a lot of free content on there, and a lot of the appearances that I do, such as this one with Stan, uh, show up on my website. But I post everything on my social media. So head over to Dr. Viviana on all social media platforms, and you can spell out Dr. Viviana.
got it. Always a pleasure having you, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Thank you so much. Take care.